They didn't know what they were doing, I don't think.
Further research within the university itself led us to Angela Goddard, head of the English Language and Linguistics subject. We spoke to her to find out more, but we never anticipated that she would be so comfortable with the idea that the apostrophe may be facing extinction.
Well, they're not very old apostrophes. I mean, they come from the fact that English is a Germanic language and it used to have particular markings on the ends of terms, on the ends of nouns particularly. So if you wanted to show that something belonged to somebody, if you take the word man, for example, it would have been manis, M-A-N-N-E-S. And when we lost the markings through the influence of French, those endings got eroded, but what we ended up with was a thing called a diacritic, which is what apostrophe is. Lots of languages have lots of them, we've just got a few. And that diacritic shows that there was something before the S. It's quite a recent thing compared with how long language has been evolving. Probably it's dying out, and when something's dying out, people forget how to use it, or they can't be bothered to teach it because it doesn't seem that useful.
Angela's views on the apostrophe situation conflicted massively with everyone else we approached, but with her educational position, she had a unique authority behind her stance. Is the apostrophe really dying out? The university's deputy vice-chancellor, David Morgan Brown, however, turned out to be a grammar purist, having assembled an arsenal of apostrophe-based complaints in his travels.
Failure to use apostrophes is symptomatic of a general laxity, a lack of attention to detail, and generally speaking, a lack of appreciation of the nuances of language. In my experience around the world, the apostrophe is quite significantly abused in all the English language countries that I've been to. The United States, I come from South Africa, so I see a lot of abuse of the apostrophe in South Africa. I expected I'd find less here, but in fact, if anything, I find even more here, where English is supposedly the first language. People, for some reason, think that they have to apostrophize the plural of acronyms, so you'll almost always see MOTs. MOTs with an apostrophe S where there shouldn't be an apostrophe. I mean, I don't understand why people think that just because a word ends in a vowel, you need an apostrophe for the plural. So you'll see, I mean, pizzas all over the place. The street outside my window has Lord Mayor's Walk without an apostrophe. My wife works in Queen Anne's Road. Queen Anne's Road doesn't have an apostrophe.
The important question to ask is, of course, why do some people get so worked up over apostrophes? Everyone we talked to had an opinion, but Angela Goddard introduced a possibly uncomfortable truth.
If you've suffered to learn something and it's been hard for you, it tends to be people who really struggled with something and get the most worked up. If somebody's learned a particular system, they really get very cross if somebody else hasn't learnt it.
A certain amount of sadness that we do see grammatical errors everywhere. You just got to look around and they're all around you.
It's often a voice of an older person who would get a bit worked up about some of these things.
They're not irrelevant. They are a convention, certainly. And there are episodes from history where people have not used the apostrophe.
There aren't many cases where you would really mistake a meaning as a result of getting the apostrophe wrong.
The possibility arises from misunderstanding as a result of the use or the lack of the use of the apostrophe.
You know, they are there for a purpose, and they do make the meaning of a sentence change.
People talk about grammar in that way as well, you know, it was really kind of hard work to learn stuff, and then somebody comes along and says, oh, that doesn't matter after all. You know, you're going to be a bit peeved.
I came up through a grammar school, actually. I was actually educated at a grammar school, and grammar was very much the emphasis and the key.
But the apostrophe thing tends to go along with people who were educated in a certain way, you know, who tend to think of their own education as rather superior. And so there's a bit more kind of snobbery around apostrophes.
In a lot of print media, there are things that can only be described as mistakes, but it's fair to be more lenient when it comes to stylistic decisions on signs. Several big-name high street establishments choose not to include possessive apostrophes in their names, just for the sake of looking a bit neater. We're used to this. Then we have cases of shops like Claire's, which proudly bears an accurately placed apostrophe, while on the other hand it's chosen not to use a capital letter for the start of what can only be a person's name. Perfectly forgivable. Pret-a-manger is French. Nothing wrong with that. However the English language evolves, there'll probably always be a seething group of people unashamed and completely within their rights to pick at any discrepancies that cross their paths. They might not change the world, but they can take their own small victories where they can find them.